The wood stork is a funny bird when standing in a tree. He has feathers on his body, but his head's bare as can be. His chest is white, his head is black, his beak is like a spear. He likes to build his nest in trees where other birds are near. He stands on little branches that can hardly hold his weight, and flaps his giant wings to balance there beside his mate. He wobbles when the wind blows, he has trouble holding on. But when he flies, he soars aloft, his awkwardness all gone. He rides the currents in the sky, he floats along with ease. With grace and poise and beauty, he sails upon the breeze. So while the wood stork may seem strange when perched atop a limb, just watch him fly and you will see the beauty that is him. This is what it sounds like when several hundred baby wood storks beg for food. These birds are too young to fly, so their parents must bring them food. Both mother and father work hard to feed their chicks. They often fly 30 or 40 miles from the nest to find fish. Then they fly back to deliver the meal to their hungry youngsters. Wood storks nest together in groups or colonies. Quite often, several pairs of birds will build their nests in the same tree. The places where they nest are called rookeries. During the nesting season, the rookery is a busy place. In one tree, a mother stork sits on her eggs. She will stay here for about a month until the eggs hatch. In a different tree, a pair of storks is busy building a nest. The male gathers sticks, vines, and leaves and carries them back to the waiting female. Together, they build a platform on which they will raise their young. In another nest nearby, the babies already are several weeks old, and the parents take turns bringing them food. The young birds crouch low and nod their heads up and down as they beg loudly for their next meal. Because the babies are helpless at this age, one adult always stays close to guard the nest. The parents also brood their chicks frequently. They stand with their wings outstretched to shade the young birds from the hot, hot sun, or to keep them warm and dry on cooler, rainy days. After the eggs hatch, the chicks stay in the nest for 7 to 8 weeks. Then, they spend the next month learning to fly. During that time, they return to the nest only to feed. Wood storks sometimes share their rookery with other birds, like these egrets. There are other animals in the rookery too. An alligator waits in the water below, attracted by bits of food or by birds that fall from the nest. Big alligators are important in the rookery because they keep away animals like raccoons that like to eat the eggs and the babies. Wood storks stand on stilt-like legs, and they are about 3.5 feet tall. Their dark gray heads are bare and wrinkled, but their bodies are covered with feathers. Feathers are important because without them, the birds would not be able to fly. The wood stork's wings measure more than 5 feet from tip to tip. In the air, The black flight feathers on the ends of their wings stand out against the white feathers that cover the rest of their bodies. Wood storks are long-distance flyers. They occasionally travel as far as 80 miles in their search for food. To make these long flights, they have to conserve their energy. They do this by gliding on thermals. Thermals are warm breezes that rise in the sky and carry the birds along, letting them fly without flapping their wings. Sometimes, though, there are no thermals. Then the birds use more energy to fly. On these days, they usually fish closer to home. Wood storks are big eaters, and they spend much of their day searching for food. During the nesting season, a pair of birds must gather more than 400 pounds of food to feed themselves and their growing young. Their favorite food is fish, although they will eat frogs, tadpoles, insects, crawfish, salamanders, and occasionally even snakes and baby alligators. An adult bird weighs about 5 or 6 pounds and eats about a pound of food each day. That's almost 1/5 of its body weight. If people ate the way wood storks do, a child who weighs 50 pounds would have to eat at least 40 hamburgers every day. Wood storks feed in a highly specialized way. Most wading birds, like this young heron, locate their food by sight. They see fish in the water and they try to catch them. Wood storks fish with their feet and their long, sword-like beaks. They wade in shallow water, water that's often muddy or filled with weeds. Here, the fish and other prey aren't easy to see. The storks walk slowly through the water, sometimes stirring it up with their feet. This startles the fish, and they dash out of the weeds. At the same time, the birds stick their open beaks under the water and swing their heads from side to side. When a fish brushes against them, their beaks snap shut instantly, in only the time it takes to blink an eye. But for this kind of feeding technique to work well, there must be plenty of fish in a small area, like a pond or even a ditch beside the road. If the fish are spread out through too much water, the storks could fish all day and not catch enough to feed themselves or their young. Most wood storks used to nest in southern Florida. Many of them lived in the huge cypress forests that covered much of the area. They also lived here in a gigantic wetland called the Everglades. Wood storks depend on wetlands like these, areas that are partly wet and partly dry. Without swamps and marshes and ponds, the birds would have nowhere to nest and nowhere to feed. Scientists have spent years studying wood storks. One thing they have learned is that the birds will return to the same colony year after year, as long as there is plenty of food nearby. They also have learned that it is getting harder and harder for the birds to find enough places to nest and feed. In the 1930s, there were between 16 and 20,000 nesting pairs in the United States. Most of them lived in South Florida. Today, there are fewer than 7,000 pairs left. Through the years, millions of people moved to South Florida, and all these people needed places to live and work and grow their food. They drained many of the wetlands. Instead of wood stork rookeries and feeding grounds, the wetlands became places for houses and farms and pastures. Wood storks had to find new places to live, so they moved north to Georgia and South Carolina. Today, they nest in both of these states, as well as in the rookeries that are left in Florida. Wood storks appeared on the earth thousands of years ago. Now they are endangered, and they cannot survive without our help. We know how to save them, if we only will. We know the kinds of places they need to nest, and the kinds of places they need to feed. And we know that if there are enough of those places, we can save these birds from extinction. What we haven't figured out, though, is how to balance what the wood storks need with what people need. Think about it. What if you had to choose between a wood stork rookery and a neighborhood where your family would live? What if you needed a field to grow your food? Would you drain a wood stork feeding pond and feed your family instead? These are tough decisions, but they're the kind we may have to make if we hope to save these magnificent birds. The way we can start is by learning as much as we can about wood storks and about the wetlands where they live and feed. The more we know, the more we'll understand, and the better our decisions will be. It won't be easy, but wood storks have their place in the natural world, just like we do. And just like us, they need places to live and feed and raise their young. Wood storks have been here for thousands of years. Now, we are pushing them toward extinction. It is up to us to save them.